Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. I'm Daryl Grove. I am not joined by Taylor Rockwell today, but I will be joined by Stephanie Yang. Stephanie writes for Stars and Stripes FC. She covers the US women's national team. Now, you may know Jill Ellis has just announced a 25-player roster for the SheBelieves Cup, which is the March mini-tournament where the US will take on England, France and Germany. Jill Ellis has selected a full-strength roster. Megan Rapinoe was not included. So I get Stephanie's take on that exclusion and the inclusion of some exciting young players. If you were disappointed by the US women's national team at the Olympics last year, this is where the rebuilding process starts. Before the interview, I want to let you know that today's show is sponsored by SeatGeek. SeatGeek has come along and made the ticket buying process easier than ever for sports and music fans. SeatGeek does all the price comparison for you, searching multiple ticket sites and ensuring you get the best possible deal. SeatGeek does all the work and you save time and money. I can tell you, I opened up the SeatGeek app and I found the SheBelieves Cup. All one word, there is no space between she and believes. So you can find tickets for the SheBelieves Cup on the SeatGeek app. You can also find tickets for Morrissey. He'll be in California and Texas this April. If Morrissey is not your cup of tea, then in my opinion, you're doing it wrong. If he is, or if you want to see the SheBelieves Cup or anything else, any of the tickets that you can find on SeatGeek, you can get $20 rebate off your first SeatGeek purchase. Here's how you do it. You download the SeatGeek app. You go to the settings tab and you click add a promo code. You enter the promo code TSS for Total Soccer Show, TSS. SeatGeek will then send you $20 after you make your first ticket purchase. So download the SeatGeek app and enter promo code TSS today. Okay, on with the show. So joining me, I have Stephanie Yang from Two Drunk Fans and Stars and Stripes FC. Stephanie, thank you for joining me.
Thanks very much for having me.
I guess I'm really happy that you're joining me because I love your opinions on the US Women's National Team that you put on Stars and Stripes FC. And we have this 25-player roster for the SheBelieves Cup. And I feel like there's a lot to talk about, so there's many, many questions I want to ask you.
Well, I hope I have many, many answers for
All right. You. Well, let's start. It's a weird place to start, but it's been the headlining place to start with the absences. So the big name missing from this roster, if you don't count Hope Solo, and there's reasons for that, we'll maybe talk about that after. The big name missing is Megan Rapinoe.
Yeah. So there's a lot of context going on here. On the one hand, Megan Rapinoe is still injured, as per Jill Ellis. The comment she gave signals Rapinoe's still kind of recovering from an ACL tear at the end of 2015. And then we saw she wasn't really match fit for the 2016 Olympics. And now Jill Ellis has said to the press, I told her to go rest and, get fully healed up, even though there was a tweet from Grant Wall that said Rapinoe was healthy and ready for selection. So I don't know really who to believe here, except based on how much Rapinoe was struggling at the end of the summer, I would believe that she's still trying to come back to 100%. Maybe she never will. A lot of people get ACL injuries and then they're never quite the same player. And this is, I think, Rapinoe's third ACL after she did her knee twice in college, I would say.
Right.
So there's that. But there are also some politics going on. I think if you've paid any attention to U.S. soccer over the past year or so, it would be hard to miss. Rapinoe started taking a knee during the national anthem during NWSL games as a way to show her support for Black Lives Matter and Colin Kaepernick. And then Sunil Gulati had some words to say about that, saying, I don't want her to do that, essentially, in a U.S. soccer uniform, because that uniform represents, certain things. So there might be tension between Rapinoe and the Federation right now. There's also her body is maybe not up to the task, and it's not a giant tournament like the Olympics. So right now is actually a great time for her to take some time off. Maybe a little column A, a little column B.
Do you see any hypocrisy in Jill Ellis selecting Rapinoe for the Olympics when she was even closer to the start of her recovery? And I presume she's been recovering ever since, right? Rapinoe's been recovering ever since the Olympics. So you would presume that she's further down the line, further to being 100% Megan Rapinoe.
Well, actually, I don't. I think it's very internally consistent with Jill Ellis's logic. I'm not saying it's consistent with, regular human Earth logic, but, if you read the interviews Jill Ellis gave around the Olympics, I don't think she ever actually said, yeah, Megan Rapinoe's 100% match fit. She seemed to believe or know that, yes, Megan Rapinoe was only good for maybe 15, 30 minutes at a time, but she valued her situational ability at the time, which was set piece delivery, creativity, width from the left side. And she was like, well, I think that's going to come in handy more than having someone like Heather O'Reilly 100% of the time. Of course, it didn't really turn out according to plan for the United States. Hindsight's 2020, whatever. So at that time, she knew Rapinoe wasn't fit. So her saying she needs to get fit now is not her contradicting her earlier self. I think it's her knowing it's not such a pressure situation or like a pressure decision as the Olympics. And so she can safely leave Megan Rapinoe off the roster. And, you know, and she's also experimenting with a new formation, like this 3-5-2 deal. So maybe Megan Rapinoe doesn't fit into her plans for experimenting at the moment. So once again, little column A, little column B.
So I guess this gets to, obviously the Olympics is just massively important, right? It's the second most important tournament after the World Cup. Whereas SheBelieves Cup, I think it might be worth getting into this because maybe some of our listeners don't know as much about the SheBelieves Cup. But at least I see it as a competitive tournament, but it's not do or die to win it. It's more about building towards the tournaments like the 2019 World Cup, right? It's about experimenting and seeing what works.
Well, I think for U.S. soccer, it's a giant cash grab.
There's also that.
Yeah, but it is. It's a nice, I would call it almost, I wouldn't say exhibition because the talent level on hand is very, very high because it's Germany, France, England, and the United States. Those are all great teams to, I mean, Germany, France alone is worth price of admission to the whole thing.
Right.
But, yeah, it is an invitational tournament that might have started as an unabashed cash grab from U.S. soccer, but it is high-level soccer between 4 of the top 10 teams in the world. So, but at the same time, yeah, it's 4 friendlies. I mean, 4 teams engaging in friendlies. So, yeah, it's definitely not an Olympics. It's just it's a nice couple of weeks of women's soccer.
So maybe by that logic, you don't need Megan Rapinoe. You really prefer to look at some up-and-comers and see how they do instead.
No, it's the ideal time to throw some kids into a high-pressure situation. Like, when do you get to test a young kid against the likes of Germany or France without the consequences of a big tournament?
Right.
So SheBelieves is actually perfect for that.
Speaking of those young kids, the 3 names that jumped out at me on the roster are Brianna Pinto, who, if I understand correctly, is 16 years old.
Yes, she is 16.
And I mean, can we start there? What's the backstory there? Because I follow the women's national team semi-closely. I had literally never heard her name before, so I was kind of shocked. And I'm hoping you might have some insight on Brianna Pinto.
Well, Pinto was a holdover. She was in, I believe, U23 camp, and then Jill Ellis selected 5 players from U23. Although being 16 and in a U23 camp already is nothing to sneeze at. And then Ellis held over 5 players from that 23 camp to come to full national team camp when they were in Carson in January. And of those 5, apparently Pinto impressed her enough to say, well, I want to bring you in to a full pressure situation. Who knows if she'll actually get time or if she'll even make the roster, because I believe they're going to cut down 25 to 23 for SheBelieves.
Okay.
So Pinto may not even make the actual SheBelieves roster. But that she's come this far, I think, is a hint that Ellis maybe sees something worth investing in down the line. If she doesn't make SheBelieves, it's not really a big deal. They'll have more friendlies. I believe there's another friendly scheduled for, I want to say, April. So there's plenty of time. She's only 16. But Ellis evidently saw something worth investing in. We'll see.
So this is kind of like just get her name out there and also get her involved with the team and see how she does playing with the senior team type situation.
Yeah, she's got the new goldfish. You keep it inside the bag and you slowly lower it inside the aquarium so the other fish and the one inside the bag, they get used to each other.
That's a good but weird analogy.
I know, it's a little specific. But.
So where does Pinto play? I mean, she's too young to be in college, right? So she play in like high school, some sort of academy?
Yeah. So she's from Durham, North Carolina, which is a huge hotbed of soccer in the United States, women's soccer at least.
Yeah.
You might have heard of a team called UNC.
I have.
Yeah. So she's a midfielder. She plays on CASL and the ECNL. I know that's a lot of letters. If viewers aren't familiar, ECNL is currently the premier girls league for getting noticed and developing. Although that's going to change soon, maybe with U.S. Soccer implementing a girls' development academy. That's a
controversy, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole nother episode. So I'll just say right now that the two are currently working out their stuff.
But it's safe to say she's playing at the highest level possible for her age right now.
Yes.
All right. I'm also, Rose Lavelle caught my eye. I know she's the number 1 draft pick in NWSL. What else do we know about Rose Lavelle?
I think Rose Lavelle is, if she can have a good rookie year in the NWSL with the Boston Breakers, that's asking a lot. Boston Breakers aren't known for their successes at the moment. But if she can have a good rookie year and establish herself, regardless of the Breakers' results, I think we'll see her for a while in the national team pool. Her coach at the Breakers, Matt Beard, has called her a box-to-box midfielder.
Okay.
She can break a line. If you've seen highlights of her from college, she's a pretty good shooter with decent range. She can set up and score. I think she could be a really solid presence in the midfield. We'll see. She'll be learning from the likes of Carli Lloyd. Now, whether you think that's a good or a bad thing is also a whole nother episode.
Well, it depends what she learns, right?
It depends on what she learns.
It sounds like she's a little bit Morgan Bryanish as well, then, if she's sort of box-to-box and a bit of an attacking threat at the same time.
Yeah. She's young. I think she could stand to be, if not immediately in line behind Brian, kind of in that area of the field, then she's close to it if she can keep up her performance in camp and in NWSL.
So is this going to be weird for Mallory Pew? Because I feel like Mallory Pew had got used to being the youngest, freshest face on the roster, and all of a sudden there's these... she's been around like a couple of years, and suddenly there's a load of new faces coming in. So I imagine her role with the team is going to have to weirdly change in a way. Like, she's going to have to be more of a veteran despite still being in college.
I think that's a good thing. I think, if you look at other teams like Australia, for instance, they've got 18, 19-year-olds coming in who already have like 30 caps under their belt. And so, you invest in kids early and then you get a great return for the next 8 to 12 years instead of bringing in players who are already 23, 24, right, have maybe a cycle and a half left in them. I think Mallory Pew already being an established presence on the national team and starting to learn to be a leader, regardless whether she's, 18, that's great for the national team for the long term, all the way through, the next 10 years. And it's great for the youth teams because she's still playing for the U20s. So, yeah, I like it a lot.
All right. One thing I want to ask about is the formation. So it seems to me that after the Olympics, the failure to break down Sweden and all that, that we then kind of switched it up in the friendlies afterwards. I think against, is it Romania? I think we played in Switzerland. Big wins, but with a back three. And I think I saw Ali Long sitting in the back three. But now I see Ali Long listed as a midfielder, at least on the roster. So was the back three experiment considered a success and the way we're going to play going forward? Or could we see them switch back now that we play tougher opposition in Germany, France and England?
That is the question, because a back three against Romania is not going to be the same as a back three against Germany. You're absolutely right in that regard. I think Jill Ellis will try a 3-5-2 against tougher teams, because there's no point in trying any formation against, with apologies to Romania, a team like that, and then saying it's a success when you've won 8-1, 5-0. There's not really much you can learn from that. So I actually would like to see her implement it. I'm not super sure about Ali Long as the middle of that back three. She does have some vision, some decent passing range, but I don't feel the most comfortable with her there. The other question being, though, who else would you put in the middle of that back three?
Yeah. Do you have a suggested answer, or are we just going to have to wait and see?
I don't know if I'd want to see Becky Sauerbrunn try it out, because I trust her defensive acumen, but I'm also not Ali Long, she has that midfielder's mind. She maybe sees the field in a different way than Becky Sauerbrunn, which enables her to help set up the attack better from that position. I might like to see her there. Maybe Morgan Bryan. I'm sorry. I can hear people screaming in the distance. Like, why would you do that to Morgan Bryan? Yeah, we'll see. I don't care if the United States loses during She Believes. U.S. Soccer probably does, but I don't care as long as they show a commitment to experimenting in a healthy way.
And the other thing I noticed in the Romania game specifically, we went with 3 forwards at one point, right? Wasn't it sort of Dunn, Press, and Williams, which at least on paper had me really excited because we used to struggle to get so many forwards on the field. I remember the World Cup; it was almost like they were all sharing thirds of a game at the World Cup. So, is there any chance we see the 3 forwards pushed out against Germany, France, England?
I don't know. I mean, Amy Rodriguez is also back in the mix. Yeah. I think Jill Ellis is going to give her some time. Mallory Pew is also back, recovering from an injury. So I would love to see Dunn, Press, Williams at the same time. I'm not sure if Jill Ellis will commit as much time to that as to evaluating Amy Rodriguez and perhaps finding a partner for Alex Morgan.
Yeah.
Because it used to be Alex Morgan and Abby Wambach were our front two, and then, everything was built around that in the attack. But I really would like to see a front three of Dunn, Press, Williams and see how that works out, especially with Press in the center. I'm not super fond of her getting pushed out wide. We'll see.
And we've got to talk about the controversy involving Hope Solo. So, as I understand it, her 6-month suspension is about to be up. I heard February, so I'm not sure if it's up now or later this month. So, theoretically, she's available for selection again. But I also saw that in the 60 Minutes interview, she had some not very nice things to say about Jill Ellis's sort of tactical acumen and leadership abilities. So, can we assume that door is slammed shut forever?
I don't know. I mean, Hope Solo on some level seems to me a very surface person. Here's the interesting thing, though. In that interview, you don't ever see Hope Solo verbatim saying Jill Ellis is a bad leader and a poor tactician. The 60 Minutes interviewer summed up what Hope Solo said. So I'm wondering what part of that interview, why did they cut it? Was it just cut for time and they summed up her comments? And she had very lengthy comments about Jill Ellis that they had to boil down to bad leader, poor tactician? I mean, it's 60 Minutes, so I'm not saying they made that up, but I really want to know exactly what she said about Jill Ellis or whether that was a summary of her comments. She hasn't refuted it so far, and you'd think if it had been an inaccurate representation, someone like Hope Solo would have immediately said, that's not what I said.
Right.
But I think Hope Solo in some ways is also naive enough to think my skill level and my ability would allow me to return to the team, even though I just badmouthed the coach.
Right. She's nothing if not confident, right?
Right. I don't know. I would assume, based on a comment like that not only has the bridge been burned, but she backfilled the river behind her, and there's just, nothing but salted earth there.
So obviously it's not going to be Hope Solo at the She Believes Cup. Who will it be starting in goal?
That's an interesting question. So there's 3 goalkeepers right now who are training with the team. That's Jane Campbell, Ashlyn Harris, and Alyssa Nair. And the gulf between Harris and Nair and Solo is huge, but the gulf between Campbell and Harris and Nair is also pretty big. Currently, Harris and Nair have been trading off starting duties. I think Nair currently has the edge. She was the one who was rostered for the Olympics, and Harris was the alternate. But it's always been close between those two, and I get the feeling one of them misses a cup of coffee or doesn't have a nap, and then the other one gets the starting slot. That's how close it feels right now between the two, in Jill Ellis's mind at least. I also don't necessarily see Campbell joining the team. She might be one of the 2 players who gets cut, which means Ellis only has to pick 1 field player to remove to make it 23. But I would like to see her get time. She's a young keeper. I think she's going to be in the pool for a while. And once again, She Believes is the ideal time to test young kids against big-time opponents without having to worry about consequences so much.
Is there an element of Hope Solo being this sort of great standout keeper, historically great keeper, that no one can quite live up to that standard, and maybe we shouldn't expect any of these other keepers to be Hope Solo?
I think at her peak, Hope Solo might have been a once-in-a-lifetime talent for U.S. soccer. I don't think there's much arguing that at some points in her career, she was the best goalkeeper in the world. And it wasn't like a flash in the pan where she was the best for like 6 months. She was the best for a number of years. But do I think no one will ever come along to rival Hope Solo? Given the diversity of talent in U.S. soccer and continuing efforts to maybe increase that diversity, I could see it happening, maybe not anytime soon, based on some of the players we see in the youth pool at the moment. But I don't want to say never.
Okay, so we should be optimistic.
Yeah, why not?
Well, speaking of, I remember we spoke to you before the Olympics, and Taylor and I were really excited about the team because we saw it as basically the core of the World Cup team, and then you add in, like Mallory Pew, and it was all looking exciting. I know you felt the same way, right? You felt like this is a team that was very likely going to be close to winning gold at the Olympics, and obviously it didn't go so well. So I'm wondering sort of how you felt sort of about the ups and downs of the team, and essentially if there's any particular thing you're looking for from the SheBelieves Cup to suggest that we're back on track. I
really want to see more creativity in the midfield in breaking down defenses. I think I want to see the team not rely on Carli Lloyd as a blunt instrument as much. I want to see them using younger players who know how to break a back line, who aren't Carli Lloyd.
Right. By break a back line, you mean sort of like a clever through ball or something to break through a defence, yeah?
Yeah, something like that. I really miss, so sorry to not talk about the United States, but Kelly Smith, a player you might know,
right,
recently retired, and she is one of the most incredible players I've ever seen at that clever through ball, or in general, completely changing the entire tempo of a game. So that's kind of what I don't necessarily see some of the young kids right now in camp as Kelly Smithian. She's another once-in-a-lifetime talent. But that's kind of the level of creativity I want to see instead of just kind of pounding at a defense. A lot of times we've seen, all right, just put the ball in the box or like take 5 shots on goal in 1 minute and something will go in. I want to see that level of coherence and, tactical thinking where you're thinking 3-4 moves ahead, where if I put this ball here, it's going to completely open up, 2, 3, 4 attackers who are going into the box. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. My abiding memory of the Sweden game at the Olympics and some other games at the Olympics was the US just banging crosses in from the right and the left, and they were very, very, very often cleared. And I kept thinking, I wish there was a more sort of, like a 3-player move where, there's a pass and then a run and someone else runs as a third person run in to get the ball through to them. So I think of it, I mean, obviously you definitely know more about the US women's national team than me. I'm not necessarily looking for one big player to do it. I'm more looking for multiple players to set up some moves, if that makes sense. Like more of a cohesive effort to break a team down involving many passes and many people.
Yeah, same.
Excellent. I really hope we do see. So what are the chances we do see that in the SheBelieves Cup?
Oh, gosh. Well, it's not like the roster that's being put together right now is entirely unfamiliar with each other. I would say that some of the new kids in Sarah Killy and Rose Lavelle might make that a little harder in terms of integration. But, our midfield's returning vets, Morgan Bryan, Tobin Heath, Lindsay Horan, Sam Mewis.
Yeah.
So I would say maybe we're not going to see, some beautiful, 20-pass orchestra that leads to a goal. But we should be able to see something coherent, like a good, crisp midfield game.
Yeah.
That, keeps it tight and implies that these people have played with each other before.
So Sarah Killian is a name I'm not familiar with. What can you tell me about her?
Well, she plays for Sky Blue FC in the NWSL, and I think she's kind of been on a lot of people's radars for a while as a midfielder who needs to be in this setup. But, for the past couple of years, Jill Ellis has been notoriously tight-fisted with her roster, and it's only until recently that she's just kind of opened up and been like, all right, we don't have so much on the line anymore. I'm not going to get fired if I experiment. So let's bring in some new kids. I would love to see Sarah Killian get time. I'm not certain that she's not going to be the one who gets cut along with Jane Campbell to make the 23-player roster.
Okay. Is that kind of your prediction?
Yes.
Yeah. I won't hold you to it, but you're just saying that she's the one that could go.
Between her and Brianna Pinto, I'd bet on Pinto getting cut, but I wouldn't rule her out.
Got it. All right. The other thing that the reason that SheBelieves Cup was sort of on my calendar is I kept hearing it as we want the new CBA in place before the SheBelieves Cup, and it doesn't look to me like that's going to happen. Is that a correct read? Because we're like 20 days away from it, and I don't see the US soccer seem to be saying that they're close to an agreement. The US players are not so confident, it seems.
We're less than 20 days because the tournament kicks off March 1st. So I guess it's not a leap year, right? So
right, yeah, February's a short month.
Yeah. Just 30 days. That's in April, June, and November. Okay. Yeah, so 18 days, a little over 2.5 weeks to go. It looks like they're finally making progress again. Things seem to stall through December and January. And then you might have seen an article in the New York Times from Andrew Das about the players' union restructuring and bringing in new counsel. I don't necessarily feel confident that there's a new plan before SheBelieves. I don't think they're going to hammer out the details of the contract that's supposed to govern probably the next 4 years in the next, 18 days.
Yeah.
But if things are going forward and they all feel good, then maybe that's propelling them into SheBelieves on like an up note. And if things go well in the tournament, then they'll bring that back and have a good conversation with U.S. soccer.
Oh, so even if it's not like signed, sealed, delivered, at least if there's some positive progress, it won't be a thing that everybody's angry about and is sort of hanging over the team so much. Yeah.
I don't give U.S. soccer a lot of credit.
Right.
I'm, negative Nancy that way. But yeah, things feel more positive now.
Am I right in thinking that it's something to do with Hope Solo no longer being involved, also involves the change in counsel from, I think the guy's name was Nichols, who was known to be aggressive, and now the new counsel is less aggressive, and so US soccer are more willing to talk. Is that? Yeah, Rich
Nichols was brought on by Hope Solo's recommendation. He was very, very into kind of saber rattling and taking a very strong position, and sometimes you need that, and then sometimes all it does is put the other party's back up against the wall, and it seemed U.S. soccer was the latter option here. So, if that's not working, then you need to change tactics or gain more leverage, and the national team has in fact lost leverage. They didn't medal at the Olympics, and they're now in the offbeat of the cycle before they hit the 2019 World Cup. So, you don't have enough to force U.S. soccer's hand, and then you're going to have to find a way to maybe get them to open up the fist a little bit. That's what happened, I think.
What about the A&E, the Lifetime deal? I mean, I know that's with the league and not with US soccer, but does that change negotiations at all? Like even by having sort of a savvy media partner with NWSL that might bring in more money, does that help in any way, or are those two things completely separate?
I think they're pretty separate. US soccer's involvement with the league would intersect with, salary cap issues. And the Lifetime deal does, to some extent, affect salary cap. The bottom of the bottom tier of salaries is doubling. So minimum wage is doubling in NWSL because the overall salary cap is increasing. And so that's partially due to the cash injection from the deal. But I feel like that's a situation that you can separate from the money that US soccer puts in, because what they pay to allocated players per club, I don't believe is necessarily. Now, there is a rule that you can't get paid more than a national team player.
Yeah, I'd heard that.
But I don't think even maximum salary in the league is increasing enough to even approach what the lowest paid allocated player makes. So that's not a problem they have to address at the moment.
Okay, but so we've covered this deal sort of briefly on the Total Soccer Show. I'm assuming there is no sort of we basically came up with the idea there's no downside to this. It seems pretty much like exactly what NWSL needed. So I wanted to run that by you and see did we miss anything? Is there anything that we should be concerned about with this deal, or is it all thumbs up?
I think there is a little bit of hesitation because it's Lifetime, blah 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 blah. But apparently the network is worth something like $900 million.
Yeah,
that's. People like to look down on Lifetime because there are some things on Lifetime to look down on. But at the same time, I think there's a little bit of, it's a women's network. Oh, it's a women's. So how much can it really be worth? How good can it really be? It's a women's network.
It's only aimed at half of all people.
Yeah. So,
I mean that in a good way. That's a huge audience.
Yeah. So I would say even if there are a couple of things to be concerned about, they're vastly outweighed by all the benefits.
And it's also, I look at it as this is Lifetime and A&E doing sort of maybe a bit of a brand shift. You know what I mean? This is that they're expanding from, the sort of movies that you think about on Lifetime into something a bit more exciting.
There was a great article on BuzzFeed, actually. I don't remember the name exactly, but I think if you Google like BuzzFeed and Lifetime Network, you'll find it, about how Lifetime has shifted away from kind of schlocky 90s, Not Without My Daughter style movies to trying to find prestige programming and to become a network that actually addresses modern concerns of all kinds of women. So, yeah, I think as much as people are worried about Lifetime brand changing NWSL's brand, they should also be thinking about how the NWSL brand is going to influence the Lifetime brand. It goes both ways.
And it also seems to me to have one network focused on one league, like we did with, say, NBC Sports and the Premier League. I think that's an exciting thing, rather than being sort of one of 10 leagues that you're showing on, say, Fox Sports.
No, that's absolutely great, because Lifetime's going to focus all their attention. NWSL's their only child. They don't have to divide attention between, seven Weasley children.
It's that kid can go to the best college.
Yeah.
A final question I have before I let you go, Stephanie, is about the SheBelieves Cup. Do you know where it's being televised?
Yes, it should be on Fox Sports 1.
Yeah.
Or Fox Network itself for all the games. If you go on the site, Germany and France is on Fox Sports 1 when the United States plays them, and then USA, England, because that's a weekend game. The other two are midweek games. The weekend game, I think, will be on Fox Network itself.
Oh, wow. That's great. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any closing remarks before I let you go?
I don't know, unless you want to talk about Carli Lloyd possibly going to Man City, but
is that a thing?
That just happened. It got the rumors dropped this morning. Carli Lloyd might be headed to Man City in the FAWSL. So,
wow,
it's an exciting time for NWSL too.
I do want to talk about that if you've got time. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this would be. I mean, I guess this would be bad news for NWSL.
In a way, it can be, but I said it before that the league was always going to have to see who they could be without big names attached. So teams were going to have to get used to the idea of not having Alex Morgan's name to sell tickets, because that's been a persistent problem. Alex Morgan plays for the Orlando Pride right now, but other teams will use her name for advertisement. For example, if she's coming to play in Boston with Orlando, they'll say, come see Alex Morgan in the Orlando Pride instead of come see us, Boston, your home team play. It's not just Boston. All the teams have done this to some extent. So I think
maybe Rose Lavelle can change that for Boston.
Yeah, maybe. But it's maybe a little soon to be testing it, but it was always going to have to happen. So let's see what happens in the league without big names Carli Lloyd and Alex Morgan around to, handhold them in the advertising. How are they going to create a home audience, a loyal home fan base, instead of going, come for this one player, for this one game, and then, you might not actually be a lasting fan of the team. I don't think this is the worst thing to happen. It's going to force people to really think about their home markets. So, and then Carli Lloyd's going to get paid oodles of dosh at Man City with that crazy Man City money. So it might be a win-win.
Speaking of sort of supporting your hometown team, what do you make of the North Carolina Courage move? So for those who don't know, Western New York Flash moved to North Carolina and rebranded essentially, right? But it was the entire team, the entire organization just upped roots and landed in North Carolina. I
think in terms of the league, this was much better than the team just folding.
Right.
And people from the league, I should say, have pointed out that they had a lot of interest in the Flash. It wasn't just them desperately, paging through their contacts going, who could possibly buy this team? There was a lot of interest in the team. So I think that's a good signal, as opposed to, when teams would collapse in WPS and you'd either have to find a last minute angel investor who turned out to kind of be a bit of a devil.
Like the Magic Jack dude?
I don't know what you're talking about. I was just a hypothetical. Or the team just folding outright has happened so many times before. So I think on that level it's good. There are some questions because, as I think a lot of people have discussed, including me, North Carolina does have a really hateful law on the books right now that mostly targets transgender people.
Right.
And we've talked to transgender fans. Some of them have said, you know what, I would prefer that this happen rather than the team fold. I understand the business decision. Some of them have said, I'm not going to spend money on the team. Obviously, that's their prerogative. The team and Jeff Plush himself have said, we talked to Equality North Carolina. We're working with them. We're going to make sure that the team is a place where all fans are welcome. And, you know, some trans fans have said, well, if they're going to be an example for the rest of the state, then I fully support the team. There's a lot of different opinions. Not everybody has the same one, as it is with any group. I as a soccer fan, like the move, but I acknowledge that maybe because my safety isn't at stake here, that perhaps my opinion isn't like the first one that should be heard.
Maybe there's a chance that, it becomes more like a rallying point. If North Carolina Courage can show some courage and sort of be sort of leading the charge against what's happening in North Carolina.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a good example if they, as a business, make it a policy to be open and inclusive, and then their business thrives. Yeah. I think that's a good example.
Yeah, because it's also, like, with all respect to North Carolina Courage and Western New York Flash, it's not as if it's like a huge multi-billion-pound team that is going to inject loads of tax revenue into North Carolina, right? So it's not as if the state is benefiting in that big a deal in that way.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's, bringing in huge business. I mean, obviously North Carolina is going to get some money out of them, but you know, I think that the positive power of their example hopefully would outweigh the downsides there, because if they can set an example and other businesses follow suit, then the net benefit to people might be worth it.
I also want to ask about Houston Dash as well then. What happens to them with no Carli Lloyd? Do they have someone ready to step up and be the face of that team?
In terms of advertising, they're not going to get anybody with a name and face as big as Carli Lloyd. In terms of on the field, I think that the Houston Dash in particular should have been prepared for a contingency plan that was minus Carli Lloyd.
Right. Do you think they did that, though?
Do I think they did that, though? I don't know. There have been stories all season long from the last NWSL season that were essentially, you know, the kind of a Benny Hill theme going on where Carli Lloyd says one thing, the team says another, and there's this weird gulf in the middle where they're just not communicating with each other. It's like a romantic comedy where it's like you could solve all your problems if you would just literally talk face to face, you know? But something is going on there. So I wouldn't be surprised if the team had gone into 2017 assuming they were fine. But I think every team should have looked at U.S. Soccer's negotiations with the national team and gone, oh, things are uncertain. We need to proceed under a certain base set of like worst case scenario assumptions.
All right, well, let's hope things look a bit more certain for the US women's national team after the SheBelieves Cup. If people want to follow your coverage, Stephanie, where can they find you?
I am at Thrace on Twitter, THRACE, and I write for Stars and Stripes FC and the Bent Musket on SB Nation.
On the Bent Musket, is that New England Revolution?
Yes, and Boston Breakers. So. And
the name of your podcast again is Two Drunk Fans. I assume people can find that on iTunes?
On SoundCloud.
On SoundCloud, all right. Stephanie, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me on, Daryl.